Change, an inevitable facet of life, something that regardless of who you are or what your circumstances might entail, everyone must go through it. I find myself in a position now where I've moved out of the house that I've lived in since I was 2 years old. So as far as I could remember, I'm in a position that I really never could have foreseen. If you asked me a year ago, if you asked me at the end of last year, if you told me, I should say, that I would be where I am today, I probably wouldn't really believe you. A lot has happened or sort of snowballed for this to be the case and this current reality to be true. It all started when I met this girl, this person who became, over time, my first girlfriend and my first relationship. But at the very beginning of the year, we started direct messaging on Instagram, and then it became Discord, and then we planned something out to meet up. Over time, that grew into something bigger. That grew into more of a romantic sort of connection. I won't necessarily go in deep into our love story in this video because it's not the sole intent of it. However, being my first relationship, especially when I have questioned in the past, when is that going to happen? Is it going to happen? It certainly came out of nowhere and was refreshing, was something new, was something very interesting, and something that was constantly on my mind. Throughout that, I had to deal with what was so troubling to me and caused so much difficulty in the form of a porn addiction. If you have watched this channel before, you would know that that's something I've dealt with, something serious that I've had to go through in my past, and it still affected me, you know, it still affects me even to this day. But especially at that time, you know, I had never had sex. I was a virgin, so I was sitting up here and kind of questioning myself, like, how is this gonna go? How am I gonna handle all the intimacy of it? And there were a lot of challenges that I had to face early on, largely stemming from that addiction. It was constantly on my mind of like, am I gonna be able to perform? And also, I've had so many questions in the past about my sexuality, so those were facets of it as well, components of the questioning and the self-analyzing, and there's been a lot of strides and improvements I've made in that regard. But in the beginning of the relationship, that was constantly on my mind. Is this going to be too much? Is she not going to, you know, love or respect me for having this issue, or lose patience, so to speak? Thankfully, she didn't. But over time, she did ask me or propose the idea of moving in together for her to finish up her last year of college. And that was back in February or March. She asked me if I wanted to move in with her, and I said yes, pretty quickly. You know, it took me a few days, but I was like, yeah, I think I'd be willing to do that, because I wouldn't really want to have a long distance thing going on, and I think it'd be most efficient for her to finish college by doing that. And so that's kind of what we planned out to do, but it was obviously months prior to the actual move, so it didn't really sink in of like, I'm gonna be moving. It was just kind of like, yep, that's what the plan is, and if something changes, but that's 5 months in the future. Okay, we'll leave it alone for now. Slowly but surely, time passed by. We reached a point in June where that move was getting a lot more serious. And because we were going from a place that was hot, I wouldn't say humid, but very hot. It was like 100 degrees this summer. It's been quite a bit there, to a place where it's a lot cooler. It rains, it's cloudy, it can be even snowy at times. We're on the coast. I needed a new vehicle. I needed one preferably with all-wheel drive, and especially considering, you know, my recent car, the car that I've had for so long, was a 2001 Honda Accord. My mom was driving it when I was growing up. Eventually she got a new car, and when I started to drive, that's the one that was lended to me. That became my friend. People don't look at that, but like cars and vehicles and things like that, at least for me, you know, it's a personal thing, I guess. Like, there's an attachment you grow towards them. And so letting go of that was something that I was like, I don't know, like, yeah, I have to do it. It's something that I should do. It's time, but it's like, it's gonna be a little bit hard for me. And in early June, one of the first things I did was purchasing a new vehicle, 2024 Chevy Equinox with all-wheel drive, brand new, and it's treated me very well so far. But watching my car being towed away for the last time, it was a little bit emotional for me. Like I said, I know it might be weird to some people, but I have that sort of attachment to these things. But regardless, my very first vehicle, in the same year that I got into my very first relationship, in this month of June, the reason why I kind of skipped a few months was because those few months were great. That was the time where my girlfriend and I were building our relationship together, but a lot of the significance happens in June. And so after I got my car, it was then time to have a family dinner, have my parents meet hers, and we were both kind of stressed out about that. We didn't know exactly how it was going to go, but thankfully it went about as well as possible. They got along very well. It was good, we were all good, but that was the first time I had ever done something like that, so I was a little nervous prior to it. The thing was, about a week later, I had a trip planned out with my cousins on my dad's side of the family, all the way out in Tennessee. Now they're from Illinois, they're from the Midwest, so that was more convenient for them to kind of meet somewhere over in that area. For me personally, of course, I'm from the West Coast, so I had to go all the way out there. The thing is, I have never flown on a plane all alone. The last time I did was when I was a teenager and I had parents and stuff leading the way, but this time around, I was all alone. That really invoked a little bit of fear in me. I was kind of scared about the idea of flying all the way out to a place I had never been when I had never flown alone before, and then trying to buy a whole rental car to get to the place. It was an hour drive from the airport, and managing everything within that. Also, what I didn't mention was that I hadn't seen my dad's side of the family in 15 years when I was just a little kid. That was another factor in it, them seeing me all grown up. They're a few years older than me. I am the youngest of all of them, so they did have kids. I remember the night that I was flying out, or the night before I flew out, I got zero sleep. I didn't sleep at all, partially because of nerves, but also because I had to wake up at the middle of the night, just 2 or 3 in the morning. We went out, my dad drove me to the airport to drop me off, and I was scared, but I got on and it was like, this is not that bad. I had someone help me through the kiosks, security and all that. Next thing you know, I was on a connecting flight to Denver and then to Tennessee. Got there for a couple days, met up with my dad's side of the family, and it went very well. I got to see some of their perspective, hear about what they've been through, catch up with them. It's almost like I didn't even know them, because being 9 years old, you're not like a fully developed person or an adult yet, so it was basically like getting to know them. And only there for a couple days, unfortunately. We talked as a group together about, like, hopefully next time we can get a larger window of time for everyone to meet up, and we can meet up in a place that's more convenient for everyone, more in the middle, like mountain time, I suppose. They had we had 10 adults in the cabin and 6 kids, 16 people in one cabin, man. It was definitely lively. I also saw my first bear out there, and there were a couple of kids that were very interested, and they wanted to go say hello to the bears, but we made sure that didn't happen. And next thing you know, I was on my way back home to California. But the following week, it was time to go look at apartments, time to go look at houses, see what we could find for my girlfriend and I. Thankfully, within looking about 3 or 4 places, we found one that caught our eye, that caught our attention, and we liked the price range as well. Within a couple days, we pulled the trigger on it. We signed the papers, and it was, set to move in mid-July. So this was about the end of June that we were here, so it was a couple weeks later. Because all this was happening so fast, it didn't really hit me. It didn't really settle in of like, I'm about to move. I'm about to do something that is so far beyond anything I've ever done in a year that has had so much happen that has never happened to me before. It's almost like this big lead up of all these things that I'm reflecting upon leading to the move. About a week passes, I finish up my last week in my job, get all the boxes, everything I need to get prepared to move, get that situation going, the U-Haul, everything. My dad and her dad help with the U-Haul and unpacking and everything. We make it here. I did manage to get a speeding ticket on the drive up here, which is unfortunate, but I've already done the traffic school and everything for it. That was another first. That's the first time I've ever been ticketed or pulled over while driving. Had to deal with that. I was speeding, to be fair. I was going about 85 on a 65, so definitely got to be more mindful of that. Sometimes on a long drive, it was about a 5-hour drive from previous home, so naturally you kind of get in this zone and unconsciously you're behind the wheel, but you got to keep in mind these things. But ever since we've gotten here, it's mostly been pretty smooth. The night of, though, after we had gotten some things unpacked, my mom and dad wrote me a letter saying they're proud of me, and a very heartfelt, sentimental semblance of words, if you will. And after reading it that night, I just had tears bursting down. I started bawling. I started crying more than I've really ever been accustomed to. I don't tend to cry too often, but I couldn't help it. I was very emotional just with everything going on. Emotionally, I guess I suppose I felt a little overwhelmed My girlfriend was right there to comfort me though, and I wasn't afraid. I wasn't ashamed to let out some tears in front of her. Now we are about a week and a half into our move, and it's kind of at this point where it's starting to settle in to my own self, physically even, of like, this isn't just a vacation. That home that I've known for 22 years might never be home again. That is a reality that is still settling in. It's a little bit difficult to fully process. My girlfriend and I are taking on the challenge. Things have gone very well so far. I've built up a habit of doing a morning run almost every day. I usually do 2 days on, 1 day off. I'm still looking for a job currently, so that's a focal point of emphasis, I should say, going forward. That's been stressing me out a little bit. Thankfully, financially, I have been able to save up quite a decent amount of money to hold off for at least like 2 to 3 months before it's like, okay, we really need to, but still want to look for it, have that security. Boom, here we are. Everything this year has completely changed, man. Everything. My first relationship, my first owned vehicle, my first time moving out, my first time flying alone, my first time taking a 5-hour drive, personally, myself, the longest drive I've done, first time getting pulled over, right? And there's many more. All the first experiences that I'm having, something about this year, it feels spiritual. And I know that might sound like a vague term to use, but like at the very dawn of the year is when everything sparked. The roots were planted right away in 2024. It wasn't like in February, it wasn't in December of 2023, it was like January 1st, 2024. Boom, meet my girlfriend, and then over time, just a slow, gradual process, and here we are, moved in. And it's still something that's processing because everything is different. At times I wonder, am I capable of taking on these challenges? Am I going to survive, thrive? Am I going to find that job? Am I going to find that purpose, so to speak, or direction? Although it's challenging and something that's still anxiety-inducing and stressful, for one, I want to embrace the challenge, and for two, there has to be a point where I sit down and say, you know what, I'm proud of myself, because all of this change, it's a burden of my own growth. It's what comes with leveling up and going through these stages of life. The next chapter, the next phase. I believe in all of the chapters we go through, there's that first of the awakening of, all this new stuff happening, which is kind of what I've entered. And then there's this settling in process and finding certain things about yourself and circumstances in your life. And over time, you kind of reach this calm. And last year felt like a calm for me, 2023. It felt like everything was kind of settled. I had a routine where I was working out every day. I had a job that was very settled, right? It was very structured, and I knew what I was doing every day. Felt very comfortable at the same time. Still home with my parents, saving up money. Everything was good. Everything was calm. And then, boom, you enter this new chapter, this phase, and it's, whoa, everything is completely different. And so that's kind of where I'm at. That's kind of where I find myself. I think the one key in being here now is habits. What are my habits going to be like? Comfort is something that I still need. I think we all need some form of comfort, but are they going to be bad habits that I find comfort in, or good habits that I find comfort in? Am I going to resort back to something like porn, which in an odd way was familiar or comforting to me at a time, even if it was an awful, destructive habit? Or am I going to turn to something like exercise, which was very comforting for me? It's always been very comforting for me, but it's a good habit. It's a healthy one to abide by, right? So it's that question that is also prompted. And here I am, and I'm gonna try to be uploading more. Actually, I kind of want to make a habit of this, and I know I say that like every time, but at the very least, to upload this, it feels good to kind of reflect and get some things off of my chest. For whoever may watch this video, I really thank you for tuning in. I kind of want to hear where you're at in life and what stage, what phase you're at, if you can relate to the idea of moving out. I come from one home. I'm one child who's lived in this nice house my entire life with 2 parents that were loving, and now here I am, trying to write my own script. All you can say is onward we wander. And I thank you guys for tuning in. Much love, good vibes, peace. Will from Shadow Ascent, signing out.